A weathered travel journal passed from hand to hand in the marketplace today, and every page carried the same note. Those familiar footsteps have returned. Come in, fellow wanderers, your tea is still warm. The storyteller has kept the best seat beside the brazier untouched, and the latest rumors from the realm battlefield have been waiting far too long to be told. If any of you vanished into secluded cultivation these past few days, don't worry. The jianghu has kindly saved enough chaos for your return. Old scouts of the realm battlefield have begun whispering the same astonishing tale. Ling Han humbled the arrogant Liu Shishuang without mercy, journeyed alone through crushing heavenly pressure to witness the faint outline of a mysterious Heavenly Venerable Seal. And now countless prodigies from the second, third, and even fourth spatial levels have gathered before the ancient Black Lake. Yet just as destiny opens a path toward unimaginable fortune, the battlefield reveals an even greater danger, where every step toward the seal may become a step toward death. Liu Shishuang's face darkened. Instead of questioning the two ninth heaven celestial kings who had abused his protection, he stepped forward as their shield, his displeasure aimed entirely at Ling Han.
My people never bow their heads to anyone.
Ling Han remained calm, yet a cold edge appeared in his gaze.
Even when they have committed the gravest of sins.
Of course, if you suffered because of them, then blame your own misfortune and bad luck.
Those arrogant words revealed the root of the entire disaster. Liu Shishuang did not merely tolerate their behavior. His blind protection had taught them that consequences were things meant only for weaker people. The two ninth heaven celestial kings immediately wore smug expressions. They had followed their older cousin from a young age, carefully cultivating his affection and loyalty. In return, Liu Shishuang had poured resources into them and protected them at every turn, allowing both men to advance to the ninth heaven with extraordinary speed. That confidence was precisely why they had dared to follow him into the deadly realm battlefield. No matter what trouble they caused, they believed Liu Shishuang would preserve their lives and let them continue their extravagant, lawless existence. They even considered themselves ambitious. Tormenting ordinary people no longer brought them enough satisfaction. Only humiliating powerful cultivators could feed their vanity. After all, as ninth heaven celestial kings, there were few places where they could not swagger about unchecked. Ling Han slowly shook his head.
It seems those two are not the only ones who need to be taught a lesson.
Impudence. The furious roar of Liu Shishuang's followers shook the air. To them, their leader was beyond reproach. Across countless battles, he had saved their lives again and again, forging gratitude into absolute loyalty. Even when he was plainly wrong, they could not bear to hear anyone challenge him. Liu Shishuang merely smiled, his confidence untouched.
Ling Han, I have heard of you. You once performed a miracle on the first spatial level, but this is not the first level. Here, countless people stand above you. On this battlefield, you are nothing.
Then you believe yourself stronger than me.
Naturally.
I do not believe you.
Ling Han strode forward without another word. There was no grand technique, no overwhelming display of light, only one hand reaching calmly toward Liu Shishuang.
How audacious.
With a cold snort, Liu Shishuang reached out to seize Ling Han's wrist. Their hands collided with a thunderous impact. The instant they exchanged that single blow, Liu Shishuang's expression changed. It felt as though his fingers had struck an indestructible wall. The force rebounded through his hand, and his bones screamed beneath the collision. Yet Ling Han's hand did not slow in the slightest. It continued forward, steady and unstoppable, closing upon Liu Shishuang's neck.
You have gone too far.
Defeat was one matter. Being lifted by the neck before his followers was another. To Liu Shishuang, such humiliation would become an eternal stain upon his reputation, and he refused to accept it. A fuzzy symbol suddenly blazed across his chest. Time was too short for him to unleash a Heavenly Venerate technique, but a Heavenly Venerable Seal could be activated with a single thought. A brilliant beam erupted from the seal and tore toward Ling Han at point-blank range.
HMPH.
Ling Han turned his palm and made the faintest knocking motion. The beam shattered instantly, breaking apart like fragile glass before a divine hammer. His hand remained almost entirely unaffected. The exchange exposed a terrifying difference in raw strength. Liu Shishuang had relied on his ranking, his seal, and his accumulated prestige, but Ling Han's physique and battle power had already exceeded the limits Liu Shishuang understood. Shock flashed across Liu Shishuang's face. Even his Heavenly Venerable Seal had failed. He had already exhausted every response available in that fleeting instant, leaving him helpless as Ling Han's fingers closed around his neck. Then Ling Han lifted him from the ground as effortlessly as an eagle carrying away a helpless chick. Every witness froze. Their eyes widened, and their mouths fell open in disbelief. Liu Shishuang was no nameless cultivator. He was a formidable elite, ranked within the top 300 on the recent leaderboard. Yet against Ling Han, he had been captured with a single palm and denied even the chance to resist.
Ling Han, you are taking this too far.
A desperate vibration spread through the air as Liu Shishuang summoned his Heavenly Venerate tool, prepared to fight even if it meant risking his life.
Too far, my foot.
Ling Han gave his right hand a violent shake. A succession of muffled cracks rang out as overwhelming force swept through Liu Shishuang's body, breaking his resistance in an instant. Liu Shishuang's strength vanished. His eyes rolled back, and he fell unconscious within Ling Han's grasp. The connection between master and weapon immediately broke. The Heavenly Venerate tool dimmed and dropped heavily onto the ground. On the second spatial level, most Heavenly Venerates had only recently achieved their breakthrough. Owning a personal Heavenly Venerate tool was therefore an extraordinary privilege. Even the transcendent flaming frost realm could not produce an endless supply of devouring metal. Veteran Heavenly Venerates from other dimensions generally carried weapons forged across long ages. Among newly promoted Heavenly Venerates, however, only a pitiful few possessed treasures of that level. Ling Han tossed Liu Shishuang aside, as though discarding a sack. Then he turned toward the 2 Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings, and the coldness in his eyes made both men tremble. This was the realm battlefield, where courageous cultivators risked everything to resist Hysteria's invasion. It was not a pleasure garden for spoiled descendants to torment others under the protection of a powerful relative. To Ling Han, their behavior was more than simple arrogance. Every act of bullying disgraced those who had bled, struggled, and sacrificed themselves to defend this land. That was why his anger carried the weight of judgment rather than wounded pride. The 2 Celestial Kings shook uncontrollably. This outcome lay completely beyond anything they had imagined. In the past, Liu Shishuang had resolved every disaster they created. They had also been careful never to provoke anyone ranked among the top 500 on the recent leaderboard, nor anyone connected to such an expert. Their cruelty had always been calculated, reserved for those unable to retaliate. Today, however, their calculations had failed. They had finally struck an iron wall, and the wall was named Ling Han. What are you going to do? Ling Han answered with a sweep of his hand. One thunderous slap struck both men and sent them crashing to the ground. Their jaws were shattered by the force, leaving them bleeding and unable to speak clearly. Their cries of pain rang through the area. Protected all their lives, they had never imagined that suffering could arrive so swiftly or so mercilessly. Fang Hongdian and the others felt a secret surge of satisfaction. They had long dreamed of teaching these two a lesson, but Liu Shishuang's protection had made such thoughts impossible. Now Ling Han had turned their unspoken desire into reality. Yet their delight was mixed with unease, for Liu Shishuang himself lay unconscious nearby. They no longer knew whether to view Ling Han as an ally, a terrifying superior, or a force entirely beyond their understanding. Ling Han continued until both men had been thoroughly subdued. Then, without hesitation, he destroyed their celestial seeds and stripped away their cultivation, turning the two ninth heaven celestial kings into cripples. For people who had treated the realm battlefield as their private playground, Ling Han considered sparing their lives an act of mercy. No, both men remained conscious, and when they sensed the destruction of their celestial seed, despair swallowed them whole. Without cultivation, they would have no power to withstand their future immortals' tribulation. When heaven and earth delivered judgment, death would be almost certain. Their downfall carried a cruel symmetry. They had survived by choosing victims who could not resist them. Now their own survival had been placed before a power they could not resist. In the jianghu, borrowed authority can create arrogance, but it can never replace strength earned through one's own path. Ling Han ignored their grief and calmly returned to his place beside Yuan Yinglong and the others. The expressions directed at him had completely changed. Yuan Yinglong and his followers no longer seemed to be looking at a fellow Heavenly Venerate from the second spatial level. In their eyes, Ling Han now resembled an elite who belonged on at least the third level. After a moment of heavy silence, the group prepared to continue their journey.
Let us go.
They rose into the sky and advanced against the roaring current of the black waterfall. The waterfall seemed endless, a black celestial river pouring down from beyond the clouds. They flew upward for 3 entire days, yet no peak appeared before them. 5 more days passed before the vast summit finally emerged through the churning mist. There, an enormous opening had been torn into the mountain. Boundless black water surged from its depths as if the cavern were connected to an entire hidden world. Within the torrent drifted countless shattered fragments of worlds, carried outward by the current like the ruins of forgotten ages. A waterfall capable of washing out broken world fragments could not be an ordinary natural wonder. Its source hinted at spatial upheaval, ancient destruction, or a mystery realm whose depths might conceal opportunities equal to its danger. On either side of the waterfall stood a colossal boulder. Many cultivators had already gathered upon them, and nearly every figure radiated a vast, dominant aura. Most were heavenly venerates. Ling Han and his companions descended onto one of the boulders. Yuan Yinglong swept his gaze across the gathering, and a sharp breath escaped him.
Who would have imagined this mystery realm has not only attracted many prodigies from the recent leaderboard, but even powerful elites from the 3rd and 4th spatial levels.
His gaze shifted toward a cultivator, dressed in a blood-red robe.
Look over there. That red-robed man is Shishuang, a renowned expert from the 4th level. He is known as the 9 Swords Demon Venerate. It is said that no opponent can survive more than 9 strikes of his sword.
The title alone carried a chilling weight. 9 sword strikes, not merely a technique, but a declaration that every battle had a fixed ending. Yuan Yinglong then turned toward a woman wearing a long green dress.
And that woman is Shi Menju, another prodigy from the 4th level. I believe she is also ranked on the recent leaderboard. Her title is Jade Flame Heavenly Venerate. Far too many elites have gathered here.
The atmosphere surrounding the black waterfall grew heavier with every name revealed. 4th level prodigies, renowned killers, and leaderboard experts had all converged upon the same mystery realm. Ling Han had just crushed a top 300 expert with one hand, yet the gathering ahead promised opponents from even higher spatial levels. The lesson delivered to Liu Shishuang was only a prelude. Beside the source of the black waterfall, the true contest for fortune and supremacy was about to begin. Yuan Yinglong had first believed that the struggle at Black Waterfall Mountain would belong solely to the elites of the second level. Yet as the gathering swelled, figures from the third and fourth levels appeared one after another, each carrying the oppressive bearing of an expert accustomed to looking down upon those below.
We underestimated the appeal of Heavenly Venerable Seals.
His sigh carried both wonder and caution. A Heavenly Venerable Seal was not merely a treasure, it was a key capable of accelerating one's communion with the power of heaven and earth. Before such an opportunity, even exalted beings from higher spatial levels were willing to descend and compete.
But this is still the second level, and heaven and earth suppress everyone who enters. Forget those from the third and fourth levels, even lords from the sixth level would have their cultivation suppressed here.
The others nodded. Within this domain, rank alone could not guarantee supremacy. Even a fifth-tier heavenly venerate would lose the overwhelming advantage that normally separated him from those beneath him. Ling Han swept his gaze across the crowded mountainside. Countless experts stood outside the cavern, yet not one of them dared to advance.
Is there some kind of suppressive power inside we? Is everyone waiting instead of entering?
Let us ask around.
Yuan Yinglong questioned the nearby cultivators, and the answer soon became clear. An immense pressure guarded the cavern entrance. The deeper one traveled, the more terrifying that pressure became. Ordinary first-tier heavenly venerates could not endure it. Anyone who tried to force a path forward would not be challenging fortune, they would simply be throwing their life away. Thus, the assembled experts waited. The appearance of a mystery realm meant that the environment of heaven and earth was undergoing a transformation. Once that change reached the proper stage, the sealed path would inevitably open. Yuan Yinglong had wandered through the third, fourth, and even fifth spatial levels. His experience allowed him to recognize most of the notable figures gathered there, and he quietly introduced them one by one. At least half of the cultivators, ranked among the top 100 on the second level's latest leaderboard, had arrived. The highest ranked among them stood seventh, a fearsome expert named Zheng Xuanden. Zheng Xuanden had remained on the second level for more than 7 trillion years. Across that unimaginable span of time, he had refined his first-tier cultivation to its absolute pinnacle. In pure battle prowess, he possessed every qualification to contend for first place. Experts from the third and fourth levels were also present. Their cultivation might have been suppressed, but their understanding of the great Tao, their combat experience, and their mastery of power remained far beyond that of ordinary first-tier heavenly venerates. This was why suppression did not make everyone equal. It reduced cultivation, but it could not erase experience, technique, or the instincts forged through countless deadly battles. Yet Ling Han felt no fear. Even if those third-tier heavenly venerates had retained their complete cultivation, he would not have been intimidated. Here, where all were dragged back beneath the same heavenly restriction, he had even less reason to hesitate.
I'll examine the situation.
Without waiting for anyone to object, Ling Han strode forward. Before countless watchful eyes, he became the first person to approach the source of the waterfall. The opening in the mountainside was not a mere cave mouth, but a colossal cavity, vast enough for countless shattered fragments of worlds to pass through unhindered. Its scale made even heavenly venerates appear insignificant. The moment Ling Han flew inside, disdainful scoffs rose from the crowd. Many elites had already tested the cavern and returned defeated. To them, his advance looked less like courage and more like reckless vanity. Who is that? Does he not think far too highly of himself?
You may be underestimating him.
Or are you claiming he is some famous and impressive figure?
Ling Han. Have you never heard that name?
Ling Han do not tell me he is the one from the first level.
That is precisely him. He has already become a heavenly venerate and entered the second level.
So it is him. But what difference does that make? Heaven's second tier heavenly venerates would be crushed to death inside. with everyone's cultivation suppressed. Even third-tier experts can only wait for the pressure to fade.
He is young and vigorous. Naturally, he wants to accomplish what others cannot and sees greater renown.
HMPH exclamation, does he truly believe he can rival Wu Heiyang?
Heads shook throughout the crowd. In their eyes, Ling Han had already fallen behind the supreme prodigies of his generation. Lin Yulian, Wu Heiyang, and Xinqiu had all reached the 5th tier, while Ling Han had only recently advanced to the 1st tier. Judged by cultivation realm alone, the gap appeared hopeless. Yet Ling Han's path had never been ordinary. Those outside measured him by rank, while his true foundation lay within the boundless dimensions of his own body. Above the waterfall, Ling Han entered the mountain. There, the falling torrent became a river, yet calling it a river almost felt absurd. It was wider than a sea, stretching so far that its edges vanished beyond sight. Even with the vision of a heavenly venerate, Ling Han could only barely discern the distant mountain walls on either side. He flew onward through that black, world-spanning current until a tremendous pressure suddenly descended upon him. The invisible force obstructing his path had already reached the pinnacle of the 1st tier. Most 1st-tier heavenly venerates could travel no far. If they stubbornly resisted, their bodies would be crushed into fragments beneath the merciless weight. Ling Han, however, remained perfectly calm. The boundless power of dimensions surged within him like an inexhaustible tide, supporting his body against the pressure. He continued forward as though walking across level ground. His breathing did not become ragged. His steps did not slow. Even his speed remained unchained. This was the terrifying advantage of power born from within. The suppression of heaven and earth could weaken cultivation borrowed from the outside world, but Ling Han's dimensional might belong to his own body. The rules restraining others could not bind him in the same way. As he pressed deeper into the mountain, the pressure became increasingly savage. This region had once been formed where the 4th spatial level overlapped with the 2nd, leaving behind zones saturated with the power of heaven and earth from the 4th level. That power was meant to suppress 3rd-tier heavenly venerates. Compared with the pressure targeting those at the 1st tier, it was on an entirely different scale. Under normal circumstances, the obstacle was impossible to overcome. A 3rd-tier expert who descended here would have his cultivation suppressed back to the 1st tier. With 1st-tier power, how could anyone break through a barrier created to stop the 3rd tier? Only a 6th tier or even 7th tier heavenly venerate might resist the laws of this realm and forcefully tear open a path. Ling Han was the exception. With the strength of countless dimensions revolving inside him, he crossed the impossible barrier and continued onward. 7 days passed before the true origin of the black waterfall finally appeared before his eyes. A colossal lake stretched across the depths of the mountain. At one corner lay a crack, and from that seemingly insignificant opening poured the water that became the enormous black waterfall outside. The sight defied reason. The black waterfall was vast enough to resemble a river of worlds, yet it had been formed by nothing more than water escaping through a crack in this lake. Ling Han hovered above the dark surface. From below, a boundless murderous aura surged toward the heavens, pressing against him with such intensity that even he felt its weight. It was the lingering aura of 3rd-tier heavenly venerates. Countless elites must have perished during the ancient collision of spatial levels, their corpses sinking beneath this lake. Though the dead had lost most of their original might, the murderous intent left by such a vast number of heavenly venerates had accumulated into something monstrous. Ling Han descended, intending to enter the lake. Yet before he could plunge into its depths, he abruptly stopped. The water pressure was devastating. Ling Han could rival 3rd-tier heavenly venerates and defeat most experts at that level. But how many third-tier corpses lay buried beneath this lake? Tens of thousands, or perhaps hundreds of thousands. Individual strength had reached its limit before the accumulated resentment of an entire fallen army. Even if each corpse retained only a fraction of its former power, their combined murderous aura exceeded what a normal third-tier Heavenly Venerate could endure. Ling Han did not recklessly gamble his life. He retreated from the surface and remained above the lake, patiently observing every change. Several days later, ripples suddenly spread across the once tranquil water. Boom! A wave erupted from the lake, soaring hundreds of thousands of meters into the air in a single instant. It crashed across the vast surface with the violence of heaven and earth overturning. Ling Han immediately withdrew. If that wave struck him directly, it would be no different from facing the combined attack of hundreds or even thousands of third-tier Heavenly Venerates. Even with his formidable physique and dimensional power, such a blow would smash his body out of shape. The entire lake descended into chaos. Boundless black waves collided, shattered, and rose again, as though the countless dead beneath the surface had awakened and begun raging against the world. No wave could rise without a cause. Ling Han narrowed his eyes, wondering what hidden force had disturbed a lake that had remained calm for so long. He watched without blinking. At last, the raging water slowly settled, and from the bottom of the lake, a golden radiance suddenly began to shimmer. A symbol had appeared. Ling Han focused his gaze, but almost immediately shook his head. The lake had not completely stilled, causing the golden symbol to twist and waver within the moving water. Its shape was extremely difficult to decipher. Worse still, some unseen obstruction concealed most of it, revealing only approximately one-third of the complete pattern. Yet the instant its reflection entered his mind, Ling Han felt his communication with the power of heaven and earth accelerate ever so slightly. A Heavenly Venerable Seal. There could be no mistake. Even though the symbol was fragmented and distorted, its ability to strengthen his connection with heaven and earth revealed its true nature. The rumors were true. A genuine Heavenly Venerable Seal existed within Black Waterfall Mountain, hidden beneath a lake formed above the graves of countless ancient elites. Opportunity and death had been buried in the same place. For a moment, Ling Han considered returning to bring the Empress and the others. Yet he swiftly abandoned the idea. The pressure in this region was far too overwhelming. One would need strength comparable to the third tier simply to remain here. Bringing his companions would not grant them an opportunity, it would only place them in danger. Ling Han's decision revealed more than caution. He refused to confuse generosity with recklessness. A treasure that could not be safely approached was not yet a blessing for those he cared about. He remained above the lake and began studying the incomplete Heavenly Venerable Seal, attempting to comprehend and master every visible stroke. Unfortunately, the symbol was not only blurred by the water, it vanished soon afterward, leaving nothing but darkness beneath the lake. Ling Han did not leave. He waited, observed, and memorized every transformation. Half a year passed before he finally discovered the pattern governing the seal's appearance. Only after the lake became tumultuous would the golden symbol materialize. Each time, it remained visible for approximately 1 hour before fading away once more. However, the lake followed no fixed schedule. Sometimes the disturbance returned after only a single day. At other times, the waters remained silent for more than a dozen days. Thus, Ling Han waited through long stretches of stillness for a single fleeting hour of revelation, gathering fragments of the seal, one appearance at a time. Such comprehension demanded more than talent. It required patience vast enough to endure uncertainty, concentration sharp enough to seize each distorted detail, and judgment disciplined enough to recognize what could not yet be obtained. Another half a year passed. By then, Ling Han had comprehended almost everything that could be understood from above the lake. The remaining mysteries were hidden in the depths, beyond the crushing water pressure and the murderous aura of countless fallen heavenly venerates. Without entering the lake itself, there was nothing more for him to see. Ling Han therefore chose to leave for now. He had not obtained the complete Heavenly Venerable Seal, but he had confirmed its existence and grasped nearly all that the surface would reveal. The seal remained beneath the lake, guarded by the accumulated might of an ancient battlefield. Ling Han's first exploration had ended, but the true struggle for the treasure had only begun. Ling Han turned away from the hidden source of the waterfall and retraced the path by which he had come. Following the violent river current downstream, he crossed the dark mountain passage with calm, measured steps. Only a few days later, his figure emerged once more from the opening halfway up Black Waterfall Mountain. The instant the waiting cultivators saw him, hushed voices swept through the crowd like wind stirring dry leaves. Suspicion, ridicule, and curiosity gathered around Ling Han, yet he walked through it all without so much as lifting an eyebrow. Did he flee because he could no longer endure the pressure? Even so, he remained inside for more than a year. That is no ordinary achievement. You truly believe he reached the depths of that space? In my opinion, he was trapped in the outer region for over a year and merely pretended to have continued onward so he could astonish everyone. If that is true, then he is far too shameless. Not one of them believed Ling Han had reached the true source of the waterfall. In their eyes, such a feat crossed the boundary between extraordinary and impossible. Even an unsuppressed third-tier heavenly venerate might fail beneath that crushing force. Their disbelief was not entirely foolish. Cultivators judged danger through realms, accumulated experience, and the limits of their own bodies. Ling Han, however, had repeatedly shattered those accepted limits. The greater his achievement, the more impossible it sounded to those who had never witnessed his true foundation. Ling Han ignored every whisper. Neither mockery nor doubt deserved his attention. He crossed the gathering and stopped before Liu Shishuang, the Rain Emperor, and the others.
How was it?
Ling Han briefly described the Great Lake, the incomplete Heavenly Venerable Seal, and the terrifying power sleeping at the waterfall's source. His account caused everyone's hearts to burn with curiosity. Each of them wished to enter personally and witness that ancient seal. Yet the pressure within the mountain had not dispersed. To step inside now without Ling Han's strength would not be exploration, it would be suicide. Yuan Yinglong listened from the side, but doubt remained rooted in his heart. He did not possess the same confidence in Ling Han as the Rain Emperor and the others. As Yuan Yinglong saw it, no cultivator below the third tier could possibly reach that place. Even then, the person would have to retain an unsuppressed third-tier cultivation level. Thus, even if Ling Han secretly possessed third-tier strength, the mountain's suppression should still have made success impossible. Yuan Yinglong's conclusion followed ordinary logic, but his error lay in treating Ling Han as an ordinary heavenly venerate. He measured Ling Han's path with rules that had long ceased to bind him. Inwardly, Yuan Yinglong decided that Ling Han was merely speaking nonsense to attract attention. After all, no one else could enter the depths and expose his claims. But another thought soon followed. The pressure would eventually fade. Once everyone reached the source, any lie would be revealed before countless experts. What purpose would such boasting serve then? Yuan Yinglong nevertheless kept silent. Ling Han was far stronger than him, and no matter how deeply he doubted, openly challenging such a man would only invite humiliation. With the mountain still sealed by overwhelming pressure, everyone could do nothing but wait. Days passed, and more cultivators arrived at Black Waterfall Mountain. Third tier, second tier, and first tier Heavenly Venerates gathered in growing numbers. Behind them came followers at the pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier and the 9th Heaven Celestial King tier, turning the once lonely mountainside into a restless sea of experts. No conflict erupted. For the moment, the crowd sat in disciplined silence because there was nothing yet to fight over. But everyone understood the fragile nature of that peace. The calm existed only because the treasure remained beyond reach. Once the pressure vanished and the mystery realm opened, patience would become greed, allies would become rivals, and every hidden blade would leave its sheath. Heavenly Venerates possessed lifespans and patience beyond ordinary comprehension. They settled down and cultivated while waiting, accepting that their efficiency here was slightly lower than usual. Ling Han also entered meditation, but his attention rested upon the incomplete Heavenly Venerable Seal he had obtained. As he activated it, his connection with heaven and earth strengthened once more. The improvement raised his cultivation efficiency from 32 times to 34 times. At first glance, an increase of only 2 seemed modest. Yet this was merely a blurred, incomplete seal. For an ordinary cultivator, doubling cultivation efficiency would already be an astonishing fortune. Ling Han had reached a level where even a small numerical increase represented a tremendous accumulation over time. More importantly, the seal had not yet revealed its complete form. If he could obtain the complete Heavenly Venerable Seal, its effect would undoubtedly become far more obvious. Ling Han then tested how the seal functioned in battle. He discovered that every Heavenly Venerable Seal first had to be charged until it shone with power. Only after awakening could it be used. Once activated, the seal continuously released its accumulated energy. Its radiance would gradually dim, and when the final light vanished, the seal could no longer provide any enhancement. It would have to be charged again before its next use. Heavenly Venerable Seals could also be combined with Heavenly Venerate techniques, compounding the power of an attack and pushing its might to a far more terrifying level. Unfortunately, activating several seals simultaneously did not multiply their enhancement. Instead, it merely caused their stored energy to be released more quickly. This restriction prevented Heavenly Venerates from simply stacking countless seals into one overwhelmingly destructive strike. The true advantage of possessing many seals was endurance. When one dimmed, another could take its place, allowing peak battle prowess to be maintained far longer. A seal could release energy for only around 2 hours. Therefore, the more Heavenly Venerable Seals a cultivator mastered, the longer that cultivator could remain at the summit of their combat strength. Different seals also granted different degrees of enhancement. Ling Han carefully tested all 8 seals within his body. The 7 seals he had obtained through the Divine Demon Sword could increase his battle prowess by roughly 10 times. The incomplete seal from the lake, however, raised it by as much as 12 times. And that 12-fold enhancement came from a seal that was still damaged and blurred. What power would it possess once completed? Perhaps 13 times, perhaps 15, or something even more astonishing. Whatever the answer, this seal was clearly superior to the 7 Ling Han already controlled. Ling Han's heart pounded with rare excitement. He had already made his decision, no matter how difficult the path became. He would complete this Heavenly Venerable Seal. Time flowed onward. Gradually, everyone sensed that the oppressive force inside the mountain was weakening.
Judging from this rate, the pressure should disappear completely in less than a year.
Half a year later, one bold cultivator finally risked entering. To everyone's surprise, the distance he could travel was far greater than before. That discovery shattered the crowd's restraint. Heavenly Venerates surged toward the entrance, each fearing that the pressure might suddenly vanish and allow someone else to seize the opportunity first. The treasure had not even fully appeared, yet competition had already begun. In the martial world, being one step slower could mean watching another person seize a fortune capable of changing an entire lifetime. The group followed the river through the mountain, advancing from one safe position to the next. Every bend, glyph, and current matched Ling Han's earlier description. Yuan Yinglong's expression slowly stiffened. The path before him was exactly as Ling Han had said. For one brief moment, doubt entered his doubt. Could Ling Han's account truly have been genuine? Yet Yuan Yinglong immediately rejected the possibility. Ling Han was tremendously powerful, so perhaps he had reached this section and memorized the surroundings. But once they advanced farther, his supposed deception would surely be exposed. After completing roughly 2/3 of the journey, the cultivators were forced to stop. The remaining pressure ahead was still too powerful to challenge. They waited another half-year before advancing again. Zone, another barrier of invisible force, blocked their path, and the expedition halted once more. Thus, they proceeded in stages, waiting, cultivating, advancing, and stopping again whenever the mountain's remaining power became unbearable. At last, nearly 3 years after their pursuit began, the darkness ahead opened, and the vast lake at the waterfall's source entered their sight.
We have reached the source.
Excitement erupted throughout the gathering, but Yuan Yinglong and his followers could only stare in numb disbelief. Everything, the river, the paths, the barriers, and the great lake was precisely as Ling Han had described. It was no longer possible to dismiss his words as empty boasting. Yuan Yinglong remembered how terrifying the pressure had once been. Yet Ling Han claimed to have crossed this entire region while the force was at its peak, strolling through it as easily as another man might cross level ground. At that moment, Yuan Yinglong's understanding of Ling Han collapsed. Previously, he had known only that Ling Han was stronger. Now he finally understood that the distance between them was so vast that ordinary comparison had become meaningless. Was Ling Han truly only a first-tier heavenly venerator? Was he some concealed 6th-tier monster, walking among them under a false cultivation level? The gazes Yuan Yinglong and his followers directed toward Ling Han changed completely. Doubt faded, arrogance disappeared, and instinctive reverence took their place. Several days later, ripples suddenly spread across the surface of the lake. In the next instant, those ripples rose into boundless, terrifying waves that seemed capable of crushing mountains. The gathered experts inhaled sharply. Even a 3rd-tier heavenly venerate struck directly by such a wave could be smashed into mangled flesh. When the monstrous waves finally passed, golden radiance flickered above the lake. The light twisted, gathered, and transformed into the blurred outline of an incomplete seal. A heavenly venerable seal. Greed and excitement ignited in every gaze. Once the remaining pressure vanished, they intended to dive into the lake, find the seal's true origin, and seize that astronomical fortune for themselves. Although the distance prevented them from seeing the seal clearly, they could still sense a faint portion of its profound power. The heavenly venerates immediately began observing and comprehending. Even the smallest fragment of understanding could slightly increase cultivation efficiency or battle prowess. At their level, such an improvement was enough to justify years of waiting and the risk of death. Ling Han alone stood calmly with his hands clasped behind his back. He had already comprehended this incomplete seal during his previous journey. From this closer position, however, the golden shape appeared slightly more complete. Ling Han continued to study its missing lines while keeping watch over the Empress and his other companions. He remained beside them like an unmoving mountain, ensuring that no one disturbed their comprehension. While the others saw only a treasure to be seized, Ling Han also saw a responsibility. His companions were vulnerable while comprehending the seal, and his strength allowed them to pursue opportunity without fearing interference. Every few days, the pressure weakened slightly. Each time it did, the crowd advanced another step toward the lake. With every step, the Heavenly Venerable Seal became clearer, and its profound aura grew stronger. Finally, after another 3 months, the invisible pressure surrounding the lake disappeared completely. Joy exploded through the gathering. Several experts reacted without hesitation, launching themselves from the shore and plunging into the lake. They knew that once a Heavenly Venerable Seal truly manifested, it would remain only for a limited time before rapidly fading from existence. Anyone who wished to obtain it had to act immediately. At this stage, hesitation meant surrender. No one wished to spend years waiting only to watch another cultivator claim the fortune during the final few breaths. Yet only a short while later, the cultivators who had dived into the lake burst back through the surface. Every one of them was covered in blood. Their robes were torn, their bodies battered, and their expressions twisted with pain and disbelief. The pressure surrounding the lake had vanished, but the terrifying force within its depths remained. None of them could dive far enough to reach the bottom, forcing them to retreat before their bodies were crushed. The final barrier had revealed itself. Reaching the lake was only the beginning. Claiming the Heavenly Venerable Seal would demand strength beyond what even these proud experts had anticipated. Only a place as dreadful as Black Waterfall Mountain could reduce mighty heavenly venerates to such miserable states, and the true struggle for the seal had not yet begun. Chapter 2785. Even the fourth tier arrives. One group after another returned from the lake in defeat. Some staggered back with pale faces, while others carried wounds that silently warned everyone on the shore. After witnessing such losses, no one dared descend again. Among those who had failed were not merely the top 100 experts of the second spatial level. Supreme elites from the third and fourth levels had also been forced back. Beyond this place, any one of them possessed enough might to suppress an age and make heaven and earth lose their color. Yet before the laws of this transcendent dimension, even those proud heavenly venerates could only bow their heads and obey. This was the true terror of a transcendent dimension. It did not care about fame, seniority, or the worlds an expert had once ruled. Once its power descended, every cultivator had to contend beneath the same merciless restrictions. More than 10 days passed beneath an oppressive silence. Then, without warning, the lake exploded. A monstrous wave rose from the dark waters, towering 3,000 kilometers into the sky. It was greater than every wave that had come before, like an entire world had been lifted by an unseen hand and hurled straight toward the gathered cultivators. Expressions changed. Pupils contracted. Even heavenly venerates felt a chill pierce their hearts. If that wave struck them directly, even a heavenly venerate would be crushed beyond salvation. Boom exclamation, boom exclamation, boom. The earth rumbled beneath their feet, as though some primordial beast were awakening below the lake. Mountains trembled, the shoreline shook, and invisible distortions spread through the surrounding void. Every heavenly venerate immediately sensed that space itself was changing. This was not the circulation of the regulations of space. It was a far more violent phenomenon the distortion produced when an entire dimension was compressed. Shock and excitement rose together within the crowd. The collision of two transcendent dimensions was terrifying beyond imagination, and no one knew what deadly calamities might emerge from it. But where heaven-shaking change appeared, opportunity often followed. Perhaps the legendary Heavenly Venerable Seal would finally reveal itself. For cultivators who had climbed to such heights, danger alone could never make them retreat. The more terrifying the disturbance, the more convinced they became that an inheritance capable of changing their destinies lay hidden beneath it. After a long while, the colossal wave finally weakened and dissolved back into the lake. Yet the waters did not return to peace. A vast whirlpool had appeared at the lake's center. Within its spinning heart was a black pit whose depth could not be measured. It resembled the open maw of an abyss, dark, silent, and cold enough to awaken fear in anyone who looked into it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
A considerable number of experts suddenly revealed expressions of surprise. They were all third-tier heavenly venerates who had descended from the fourth spatial level with a single exception. That exception was Ling Han. They had all sensed several powerful auras surging upward from the lake's depths. Although the dimension suppressed everyone's cultivation, the perception, foundations, and accumulated experience of a third-tier heavenly venerate did not simply vanish. Their advantage over second-tier and first-tier experts remained, even if that advantage had been sharply limited. Ling Han, sensing the disturbance alongside them, once again revealed how extraordinary his foundations had become. A short while later, the second-tier heavenly venerates sensed the approaching presences. Then came the first tier. Finally, even the pseudo-heavenly venerates and ninth heaven celestial kings felt the violent auras rising from below. At that very moment, more than a dozen figures burst from the central pit. Each figure was monstrously enormous, their bodies twisted in unnatural forms, bearing far too many legs, arms, eyes, and heads. Deep wounds covered their flesh, and dark blood continued pouring from them as they emerged into the open air. These were creatures created by hysteria. Ling Han narrowed his eyes. The aura of time clinging to these monsters was immensely ancient. They were nothing like the newly created soldiers that assaulted the cities, whose existences carried only the faintest traces of age. A possibility surfaced in his mind. Could these be remnants of Hysteria's army that had survived when space was folded countless years ago?
There are only a dozen or so lingering dregs.
A great elite from the fourth spatial level stepped forward with disdain. Without hesitation, he charged directly at the wounded monsters. Once he moved, the others naturally refused to stand aside. Several thousand cultivators surged forward like a raging tide, surrounding the ancient soldiers of Hysteria from every direction. Ordinarily, Hysteria's army relied upon endless numbers to drown its enemies. This time, fate had reversed the battlefield. Barely more than a dozen monsters found themselves besieged by several thousand heavenly venerates. Techniques flashed, power thundered. The shoreline shook beneath the combined assault, and the wounded monsters were torn apart before they could establish any formation. The battle ended quickly. Within this dimension, every combatant had been suppressed to the first tier, and under such conditions, numerical superiority became overwhelmingly important.
they were all third-tier creatures.
They must have been trapped here when space folded all those years ago.
After surviving through so many epochs, they even developed intelligence of their own. Without our advantage in numbers, they would not have fallen so easily.
Fortunately, the power of dimension suppresses them as well. Their numbers are too small to create any serious disturbance.
Still, remnants of Hysteria's army have actually survived in this place until now. It is almost unimaginable.
Since those monsters emerged alive from the lake's depth, does that mean we can descend as well?
The final question spread through the crowd like fire through dry grass. Those creatures had climbed out of the abyss alive. Though grievously wounded, they had survived. That alone suggested the path below was no longer completely sealed. Several cultivators immediately leaped from the shore and plunged into the pit at the center of the whirlpool. There was no crushing pressure from the lake water within that hollow passage. Otherwise, the ancient soldiers of Hysteria could never have escaped through it. We should hurry as well. The temptation was understandable. A Heavenly Venerable Seal was a treasure capable of affecting an expert's future path. No one wished to watch such a fortune fall into another person's hands. Ling Han raised one hand, stopping them before greed could drive them forward.
Don't be impatient.
His gaze remained fixed upon the whirlpool. He could feel that the passage was unstable. If they descended and the lake suddenly collapsed back over the opening, the water pressure would strike with force comparable to countless third-tier Heavenly Venerates attacking simultaneously. Who beneath the suppression of this dimension could endure such an assault? Yuan Yinglong considered Ling Han's warning and nodded.
Do not act rashly.
Ling Han's caution was not cowardice. True courage meant recognizing danger and choosing the right moment to advance. Charging blindly toward a treasure without understanding the battlefield was not bravery, it was surrendering one's life to greed. Most of the cultivators managed to suppress their desires. Ancient sites demanded boldness, but even the bold had to preserve their lives long enough to seize an opportunity. Some experts called out warnings to those already approaching the pit, yet many remained stubborn. Their eyes burned with ambition, and every warning sounded like an attempt to frighten them away from fortune. As they saw it, this was an opportunity granted specifically to them. If they delayed by even a single step, the Heavenly Venerable Seal might be taken by someone else. One after another, they dived into the dark passage. In moments, their auras disappeared beyond the range of everyone's senses. Only 15 minutes passed. Then the earth began trembling violently once more. Boom! Another enormous wave erupted, and an immeasurable volume of lake water crashed into the central whirlpool. The black passage vanished beneath a roaring torrent. Every face on the shore changed. The force of that descending water was equivalent to more than 100 third-tier Heavenly Venerates attacking at the same time. How many first-tier Heavenly Venerates would be required to resist such destruction? At the very least, the cultivators trapped below were nowhere near enough. They were finished. In such a short time, they could not possibly have reached the bottom. With no shelter and nowhere to escape, only one fate remained for them beneath that crushing flood. This was the cruel price of mistaking impatience for destiny. The Heavenly Venerable Seal had not killed them. Their own refusal to observe, wait, and judge had already decided the outcome. The experts on the shore could only shake their heads. Even the third-tier Heavenly Venerates were helpless. Their cultivation was suppressed here, but even at full strength, they could merely protect themselves against such overwhelming force. Saving those buried deep beneath the lake was impossible. There was nothing to be done. Those cultivators had chosen this path for themselves. The survivors waited in silence. After some time, the pit at the whirlpool's center began expanding once again. At the same moment, the lake's water level started falling, and it fell with astonishing speed. Space was being compressed and driven into another collision. The terrain beneath the lake had changed again. The lake bed had most likely cracked apart, and it might even have become connected to another dimension, allowing the enormous body of water to drain away. As the waters receded, everyone sensed the terrifying pressure within the lake weakening rapidly. Eyes sharpened, auras stirred, hands tightened around weapons and treasures. The true contest was about to begin. Wang exclamation, Wang exclamation, Wang. Several figures tore through the distant sky and descended upon the shore. They appeared to be of different ages, yet every one of them radiated an aura capable of suppressing heaven and earth.
Gasp!
Those are the great elites of the 5th spatial level.
4th tier Heavenly Venerates.
Jacques swept across the shoreline. No one had expected the disturbance to reach so far that even 4th tier Heavenly Venerates would be drawn here. Fortunately, the dimensional suppression remained absolute. Even a 4th tier Heavenly Venerate could display only 1st tier battle prowess in this place. At least on the surface, the competition remained fair. Yet equal cultivation did not mean equal combat strength. A 4th tier expert still possessed deeper comprehension, sharper instincts, and countless epochs of battle experience. The suppression had narrowed the distance between everyone, but it had not erased it. Yuan Yinglong had once visited the 5th spatial level. As his gaze swept over the newcomers, he recognized at least half of them.
Shen Fei Wu Feng, He Liquan.
Ling Han's expression shifted slightly when he heard the final name. He Liquan. Was that not He Yufeng's father? In the past, He Yufeng had relied upon his breakthrough to the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier, and the protection of a 4th tier father to bully Ling Han openly within the martial academy. Later, after Ling Han's strength increased dramatically, he returned the humiliation and thrashed He Yufeng without mercy. That defeat provoked He Liquan's resentment. The 4th tier expert had even refused to approve Ling Han's application for indefinite leave, revealing a pettiness unworthy of his lofty cultivation. And now, Ling Han was finally seeing the man himself. A slow smile appeared at the corners of Ling Han's lips. Outside this dimension, the gulf between Ling Han and a 4th tier Heavenly Venerate was vast. But here, He Liquan's cultivation had been dragged down to the 1st tier. The balance of power had changed, and an old grievance suddenly stood within striking distance. Could this be called anything other than He Liquan delivering himself straight to Ling Han's doorstep? The 4th tier Heavenly Venerates had finally arrived, yet not one of them bothered to speak. Their gazes swept across the gathering with cold indifference, as though every 1st, 2nd, and 3rd tier expert present were merely dust beneath their feet, unworthy of even a second glance. Their arrogance was not without foundation. Among Heavenly Venerates, the difference of a single tier was like the distance between the boundless heavens and the mortal earth. A higher tier represented countless years of accumulation, deeper comprehension, and power that ordinary cultivation could not bridge. A suffocating silence descended upon Black Waterfall Mountain. Even the mighty 3rd tier elites unconsciously tightened their expressions before these 4th tier existences. They might be protected by the suppression of the realm battlefield for now, but no one could remain within this place forever. Once they returned to the normal world, the difference in cultivation would regain its full, terrifying meaning. A 4th tier could crush those beneath him with overwhelming ease, so offending one here could plant the seed of a future calamity. The strong were revered. That was not merely a custom of the martial world, but an eternal law carved into the very bones of cultivation. One expert after another stepped aside, deliberately leaving a wide path around the 4th tier Heavenly Venerates. That simple gesture was both submission and respect, an unspoken acknowledgement of the hierarchy separating them. Such distinctions had always been clear. Before the 4th tiers arrived, the 3rd tier Heavenly Venerates had dominated the field. The 2nd tiers deferred to them, while the 1st tiers, in turn, showed respect to the 2nd tiers. Of course, if a Heavenly Venerable Seal were to appear, all courtesy would vanish in an instant. Before an opportunity capable of altering one's destiny, even ancient experts would tear aside their masks and fight without mercy. But just as everyone accepted this oppressive order, a lone young man began walking forward. His pace was neither hurried nor hesitant. Step by step, he headed directly toward one of the 4th tier Heavenly Venerates He Liquan. What is that fellow trying to do? He is probably going over to flatter the 4th tier, Heavenly Venerate. What else could he possibly want? Surely he cannot be planning to provoke him. Wait, that man is Ling Han. So what if he is Ling Han? Well, that man has always been remarkably gifted at stirring up trouble. The moment Ling Han's identity became known, strange expressions spread throughout the crowd. His reputation had long preceded him. He was stubborn, fearless, and possessed a temper that refused to bow before authority. More importantly, he was the supreme prodigy who had once stood on equal footing with Wu Heiyang. The idea of such a man approaching Heiliquan merely to flatter him was so absurd that almost no one could believe it.
Hey, exclamation, what exactly is he planning to do?
Yuan Yinglong's heart climbed into his throat. He would not have cared if Ling Han merely wished to stroll around the mountain, but that path led straight into the presence of a 4th tier, Heavenly Venerate. What kind of disaster was Ling Han preparing to unleash this time? A 4th tier Heavenly Venerate could normally kill a 1st tier with little more than a breath. Although the 2nd spatial level suppressed everyone's cultivation, those who had reached higher tiers still possessed superior experience, comprehension, and accumulated foundations. In the eyes of the crowd, a 1st tier challenging a 4th tier was not merely reckless. It violated the natural order of the cultivation world, and no matter where the confrontation occurred, the weaker party would inevitably be judged as the one courting death. Yet the Empress and Ling Han's companions remained perfectly calm. They understood him far too well. Once Ling Han had made a decision, neither threats, logic, nor the pressure of a 4th tier expert could force him to retreat. He is not going to do anything serious. He is probably just going to spar with Heiliquan. The corners of Yuan Yinglong's mouth twitched uncontrollably. Spar with a 4th tier Heavenly Venerate to him. Those words sounded no different from announcing that Ling Han had completely lost his mind. Even if Ling Han's battle prowess was monstrously powerful, Heiliquan had lived and cultivated for far longer. He had very likely mastered additional Heavenly Venerable Seals, and every seal represented a terrifying multiplication of power accumulated through time. This was the greatest hidden advantage of an ancient expert. Suppression could reduce Heiliquan's raw cultivation, but it could not erase his knowledge, experience, or the Heavenly Venerable Seals he had comprehended over countless years. Furthermore, even if Ling Han survived here, what would happen after returning to the normal world? Being remembered by a 4th tier Heavenly Venerate was no small burden. It was a shadow capable of following a cultivator across realms. Yuan Yinglong's followers wore increasingly ugly expressions. Some wished they could vanish into the crowd immediately, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and Ling Han's group before disaster struck. Ling Han continued forward without the slightest concern. He passed through the surrounding cultivators and entered the invisible territory everyone had left around Heiliquan. At that moment, every gaze converged upon him. Even several other 4th tier Heavenly Venerates turned their heads, measuring this audacious 1st tier who had dared to approach one of their own. Heiliquan also gave Ling Han a few additional glances. Ordinarily, he disdained everyone beneath the 4th tier. He paid little attention to 3rd tiers, dismissed 2nd tiers entirely, and regarded 1st tiers as little more than insects. But when Heiliquan clearly recognized the young man before him, his eyes narrowed. Ling Han. Killing intent immediately stirred within Heiliquan's heart. This was the brazen man who had humiliated and bullied his son, He Yufeng. Such an offense was enough to ignite the fury of any father, much less a proud 4th tier Heavenly Venerate. Yet there was bitter irony in the situation. Heiliquan also had reason to thank Ling Han. It was precisely because of Ling Han's provocation that He Yufeng had broken through his limits and advanced to the 2nd tier. Heiliquan hesitated. Should he preserve Ling Han for He Yufeng to defeat personally? allowing his son to erase that humiliation with his own answer, should he strike first, and teach this insolent junior a painful lesson. Ling Han gave him no time to decide. His fists arose, his aura surged, and his figure shot forward like a thunderbolt, tearing through a tranquil sky.
There is no need to say anything. Let us fight.
For one stunned heartbeat, the entire gathering seemed to freeze. He had truly attacked. This was no verbal provocation, and no empty display of courage. Ling Han had crossed the distance between them, and challenged the authority of a fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate with his own fists. Eliquin himself had never imagined that Ling Han would attack without warning. In the normal world, such an act would have been madness. On the 5th spatial level, or even the 4th or 3rd, Eliquin could have suppressed Ling Han with a casual wave of his hand. But this was the 2nd spatial level. The power of every expert here had been restricted to the 1st tier. Even Eliquin could display, at most, the strength of a peak stage 1st tier Heavenly Venerate. Realizing the danger, Eliquin moved instantly. Heavenly Venerable power gathered around his body as he raised his arms to parry Ling Han's incoming strike. The two forces collided with a deafening impact. Yet Eliquin's defense shattered before Ling Han's fist as though it had never existed. Ling Han's punch drove directly into Eliquin's face. Blood burst from the 4th-tier expert's nose, and his body was hurled backward beneath the horrified gazes of the entire mountain. Ling Han did not stop. He pursued with terrifying speed, his fists descending one after another like a violent storm. Each blow carried crushing force, leaving Eliquin no space to regain his footing and no chance to launch a counterattack. Ling Han's strategy was brutally simple and perfectly suited to the battlefield. Seize the initiative, close the distance, and never allow the more experienced opponent enough time to employ his accumulated methods. Under equalized cultivation, Ling Han's overwhelming physique and battle prowess became decisive advantages. 4th tier or not, Eliquin was now trapped beneath the laws of the 2nd spatial level. Here, Ling Han could confidently declare that even if a 5th-tier Heavenly Venerate appeared, that expert would still have to acknowledge him as the elder brother. The crowd watched in absolute disbelief as the dignified Eliquin was battered like a helpless sandbag. He could neither defend effectively nor return a meaningful blow. Was this truly a battle between a 1st-tier and a 4th-tier Heavenly Venerate? Many cultivators nearly raised their hands to rub their eyes. Even with his cultivation suppressed, Eliquin should still have been slightly stronger than an ordinary 1st-tier. His experience and comprehension alone should have placed him above most experts at that level. And yet before Ling Han, those advantages seemed worthless. The spectacle revealed just how terrifying Ling Han had become. He was not merely strong for a 1st-tier Heavenly Venerate. Within the limits of this spatial level, his combat ability had reached a point where even an ancient 4th-tier expert could be completely overwhelmed. Yuan Yinglong's face turned deathly pale. At that moment, he swore to himself that after leaving this place, he would draw the clearest possible boundary between himself and Ling Han. Once Eliquin regained his true 4th-tier strength, revenge would be inevitable. Anyone associated with Ling Han might be dragged into the storm, and Yuan Yinglong had no desire to be buried beneath the wrath of a humiliated Heavenly Venerate. After all, what could be more humiliating than a 4th-tier Heavenly Venerate being beaten senseless by a 1st-tier before countless witnesses? If Eliquin did not seek vengeance, he would no longer have the dignity to call himself a 4th-tier expert. But even if he eventually tore Ling Han apart, the memory of this public defeat could never be completely erased. Everyone reached the same conclusion. Ling Han's courage had surpassed the boundaries of reason. Why offend a 4th-tier Heavenly Venerate so thoroughly when there was no way to kill him here and eliminate the future danger? Yet this was also the essence of Ling Han's character. He did not measure every action according to the enemy's future strength. When an opportunity arose to settle a grievance, He struck first and accepted the consequences afterward. Whether one called it courage or madness depended entirely on which side of his fist one stood. Still, no one could deny the strength displayed before them. Within the first tier, Ling Han appeared to have reached the very summit. As expected of the man who earned such astonishing military merits on the first spatial level, I once thought the rumors were exaggerated, but now it seems he truly possesses the strength to justify them. A final, thunderous punch crashed down. Liquan struck the ground, his former dignity scattered beneath the dust. Ling Han stepped forward and planted his right foot squarely upon the fourth tier, Heavenly Venerate's chest. Only then did the storm of fists finally cease.
Good. Now we can talk.
Liquan was so furious that blood rose from his throat. Moments earlier, he had been debating whether to beat Ling Han first. Instead, before he could even make his choice, Ling Han had already beaten him into the ground. The humiliation was so unbearable that Liquan nearly wished the earth would open and swallow him. Before so many witnesses, how could a dignified fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate endure being pinned beneath the foot of a first? At last, another fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate spoke. His tone was casual, but beneath that calm surface lay unmistakable displeasure.
Young man, do you not think you have gone too far?
Ling Han turned and glared at him without the slightest trace of fear.
If you refuse to accept it, come and fight me. Otherwise, stop blabbering.
The fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate fell silent. His face flushed crimson, and murderous fury surged through him. This junior was far too arrogant. He had not merely defeated Liquan, he was openly declaring that fourth-tier Heavenly Venerates were unworthy of his respect within this spatial level. But anger could not change reality. That expert's strength was only slightly greater than Liquan's. He might possess an advantage, but not enough to suppress Liquan completely. If he challenged Ling Han now, the most likely result was that another fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate would be beaten before the entire crowd. He could certainly kill Ling Han after leaving this place, but that future revenge would not erase the humiliation suffered today. The fourth-tier expert swallowed his rage and said nothing more. And with that silence, Ling Han accomplished something even more shocking than defeating Liquan. With one challenge and a single cold glare, he forced another fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate to retreat without throwing a punch. On Black Waterfall Mountain, the old hierarchy had not merely been questioned, it had been trampled beneath his feet.